It's a scary reality to be starting at zero again. Any time that we start with zero, we're in a phase of learning and working it out. Put yourself out there on the line. Like, you've dedicated yourself to signing up and showing people this version of you. Grab your phone, record yourself, and tell me a story. Hello and welcome to the Big Vision Business Owners podcast. This is the place for business owners that have a message that they want to share with the world. And we'll be talking on this podcast about how to get seen online, how to raise your visibility and actually get your message out there so that you can have that impact on the world. We are all about creating a true connection with your audience, building a community around your podcast, what you do, that feeds into your business, that can lead to growth, leads, and more sales. And finally, we're all about changing the world, changing the way the world thinks by helping you to share your message so you can have that impact, leave that lasting legacy, and be part of greater change in the future. And I'm your host, Chantel Dyson, who's here to do it with you along the way. I'll be sharing my expertise and experiences with being a big vision business owner, with being able to create content online the clever way, which means not having to spend hours on your phone. And together, we'll be looking at how we can raise your profile online to get your message seen and heard. And with that, let's get on with today's episode. Welcome to another episode of Big Vision Business Owners. We're going to be talking about a very exciting topic today, which is how to get seen when you've got 0 followers. Now, when you start out, there is nothing more daunting than the idea that if you're doing the right thing, you've started a new Instagram page, you've launched a podcast, and you're like, oh God, what if nobody listens to me? What if people don't like my content? What if they don't interact? I've got no followers. And you're looking around, scrolling through, and like there's loads of people around you, they've got 3,000 followers, 5,000 followers, 20,000 followers. You're like, I'm just never, ever going to get to that. And you're posting, but you're not getting seen. Now, I imagine that some of you don't have 0 followers, but we did all start with that 0 followers. And whether you start a new page like I did when I went from Chantel the Coach to the Clever Content Creator, it took a few iterations of that name. It's a scary reality to be starting at 0 again. Let's remember that my story is that Chantel the Coach got to 2.3k followers on Instagram, 38,000 followers on TikTok, 100,000 downloads of the podcast. It's a stark reality to go back to the beginning and go again. And you're kind of like, oh, I know I can do this. Like, I physically know it. I've done it. But I can put myself out there again. Why do I not just stick with this one? Because it's safer. It looks better, right? And it's all of that we're going to delve into today, because getting seen online is one of the easiest things to do in terms of it's an easy level of entry to get into now. You can pick up your camera and get started, whether that's a podcast or content, and you can go for it. But we end up getting ourselves caught up, looking around at how everybody else is doing, worrying that our follower count is going to make the biggest piece of difference in our business. And there's 2 sides to this. The first one is that it's the mindset around it. It's what you tell yourself as a result of not getting seen online, of what that means about you. And then it's an actual strategy to how to actually get seen. There is a problem sometimes with your strategies and the way that you're going about things to get seen online. And I'm going to delve into the difficulties that we face, what we can do about that and how that works in context, and give you some tips, some strategies for how to actually get seen when you've got no one watching you. So I'm going to start with the challenges that starting a new account comes with. When you put yourself out there on the line, like you've dedicated yourself to signing up and showing people this version of you, it's the self-doubt and the lack of confidence that comes in, especially because people make it seem so easy, like, oh, use this trending sound and just put a B-roll photo or B-roll footage underneath it. And it got me 20,000 likes. All right, okay, like how repeatable is that? Is it because you were first? Is it because the text you put over it was really good? Is it because you've already got 100,000 followers? There is these instances where what one person does doesn't necessarily mean it applies to us. And we put this pressure on ourselves that we need to look like that to be successful. Now, I had videos go viral a number of times on different platforms, but those things don't necessarily directly relate to my success, my validation as a person. And it also doesn't determine how well I'm doing in business. Yes, there were some brand deals that I did. As a result, if you can show views and if you can get a followship, then you're more likely to be able to be paid to just post videos. You're effectively a content creator just by trade, or an influencer, if you really want to call them that. That's kind of what you fall under. You're trying to influence your audience by showing them a product, by building the brand reputation, things like that. There's all this stuff that comes up internally, and we worry about getting it wrong. If you listen to last week's episode on, making errors, where I did the episode completely unedited, which this episode is pretty much like, but I've already stumbled once, so we'll see if we need to edit that. But there's all this what's going to happen? I've got no one to follow. No one's following me. And there's this kind of debate. Do I get my friends to follow me? Do I change my personal account into a business account? Because then at least I've got some followers. And in my case, when you change business, should I just keep that but change it? And then I've got 2,000 people already, and they might be the same people. And all of this worry that just because we have less followers, people are going to think less of us as people. And don't get me wrong, you can think, oh, well, okay, they've got a fair few followers, enough people must trust them. But I don't think I've ever thought about a person I've worked with and looked at their followship to decide if I'm going to work with them, unless that is what they teach, which is how many followers have you got? I'm going to build how many followers you get. A lot of the people I've seen, actually, then I've been on going to events, listening to conferences, they're on stage and they go, follow me on Instagram. And you look and they've got less than 2,000 followers. Yet they're talking about running a 6-figure business or even getting on for 7 figures. And you're like, but you've got no followers. And it was that realization for me when I started seeing people talking and their Instagrams specifically didn't have the backup in the waiting, that I was like, oh God, my focus on what's important here is really off, because I am looking at the wrong thing. Instead, I'm focused so much on getting seen and getting more followers, not actually focusing on the things that matter in my business. And so I was like, I do want to get seen. You have to get seen to be able to have people to sell to, right? The idea of getting seen is not necessarily, in most of our cases running businesses, it's not to get seen. It's not to have 1 million followers. It's to have people that would like to work with us because we can help them with the products and services that we offer. We enhance their lives, solve their problems, or make their lives even better than they already are. So exposure is important, but to get ourselves caught up in looking at the wrong thing and freaking out about that stops us from getting seen online. Now, the other thing is that it's strategy that's holding you back. So you are posting consistently and you are online. You've actually got over the fact that you've got to post, you're going to go wrong, it's not going to be right. But you can't actually get any of these strategies that everybody says to work for you. And that's because there's so many strategies out there and they all work for different reasons. And you'll see people giving you ideas for products, for services, for XYZ. When there are some other principles at work, I keep seeing this advert at the moment, which is like, we managed to get this guy to go viral and we did it 4 times with different accounts. And I sit and look and I go, but is that a hack? How much did that do for their business? That's cool that you got them so many views, coming back to my other point. But what did that do for that person? Because it's lovely to have 100,000 views on your first ever video. Is it? We'll talk about that in a minute. But I can use that strategy to get seen, but is it going to then funnel through? And ultimately, if you are just purely looking to get seen, then that's cool. But in business, we're not just looking to get seen. It is a case of moving from realizing that getting seen isn't everything, because having a big following doesn't equal sales. It is about developing a system that works for you. And every single account that I've had has gone through starting at 0. Chantel the Coach, Instagram, 0. Chantel the Coach, TikTok, 0. The Single Girls Guide to Life podcast, 0. The Clever Content Creator, 0. What are we on? Big Vision Business Owners, 0. And anything else in between. I've been on Pinterest, I've been on there, each of my events, when I first launched some of them, 0. Masterclasses, 0. Like, it's happened. Because any time that we start with 0, we're in a phase of learning and working it out. And strategies, of which there are many, are not all meant for us because certain conditions work for certain people. There are going to be different strategies that work for you purely based on the person that you are. My strategies are going to work very differently to strategies for people that are less confident on camera. I like being on. I don't mind being on camera. I don't like being on camera, but I have no aversion to it. I stand in front of classrooms, therefore I can stand in rooms and facilitate, and I can stand on a camera. Oh my god, lockdown prepared me like nothing else for being on camera, right? I had like year groups of 150, 200 kids looking at me whilst I'm teaching a maths lesson with no actual response coming back. You think talking into this microphone is difficult for me? But other people that haven't had that experience are going to find that harder. And so the strategy to get seen online for them might be better that they write a blog, that they create posts if you're particularly arty, if you can articulate well in writing. Or it might be better to go down a PR route where you get interviewed, you're asked questions. It's much easier to answer questions sometimes than it is to just talk at a camera having planned out what you were going to say and just keep going. But whatever it is, your blog is going to start at 0. The number of interviews you get initially, it's going to be 0. We all have to start at 0 and have to appreciate the beginning bit. Because let's think about it. Would you rather 10,000 people see your first posts or just 10 people see your first posts? Because when I look at my first pieces of content, even when I was recording stuff for schools, I did start to experiment with the personal development world, and I'm whispering at the camera. And the content just isn't as strong as it is now. My messaging is twofold now. My confidence on camera is twofold. The way that I've just done a session. I've worked with a client. I've talked through their course with them, gone through how we're going to make it educationally rigorous, make sure that the facilitators are there, etc. It's a side note to the business, but it's course content creation and upskilling people. And now I've jumped into this. I couldn't have done that back when I first started. I had to hype myself up. I was making sure that everything was ready. And I wasn't worrying about the follower count. But we are going to move into the strategies that you might not know that you are doing, and therefore how you can actually get seen online. There are hundreds of strategies, but what I'm going to do is give you a number of things to think about that you might not have heard much about and that don't get enough emphasis. Like, you'd have heard, what would you have? I gave the trending reel audio example. Create shareable content. I mean, yeah, great. Yeah, always try to make everything a bit shareable, really. Something that's going to resonate with people. But I'm going to talk about a couple of things that you might be doing that you don't realise you're doing and actually help you to get seen online. Now, the one that I will repeat that pretty much everyone is yapping on about at the moment is to be authentic. Now, I just asked Alexa what authentic meant, and she said that it's not forced or copied. It is genuine or real. Now, that's why whatever I say I do to get seen online cannot necessarily be applied in a personal respect. And I've mentioned this already. I'm a very different person to who you are. And the issue with getting seen online when you've got no followers is that there's this tendency to go, well, they've got loads of followers, I'm going to copy what they do. Now, if we're going to be authentic online, which is what everyone keeps yapping on about, then you need to stop copying what other people are doing. Because what's happening is we're getting lots of people copy the same thing or try to be something that they're not. Firstly, when you try to be something that you're not, you come across inauthentic. You come across as ungenuine. I don't know if all of these little words that I'm putting in front of words are right, but you get my point. When you try to be something that you're not, it's glaringly obvious over time when that's the case. People can pick up on that like that. And if there's anything that we've observed in what's happening online, it's that TikTok is doing very well. And it had its super peak in 2020. It sort of went down a little bit after that just because everyone went back to work. But ever since then, it's been steadily rising. And the beautiful thing about TikTok is that it is all about authentic content. It is what makes it stand out from absolutely everything else. Instagram has always been about the aesthetic, looking perfect. YouTube is very much about creating a great production. You've got to take people on a journey. TikTok has been grab your phone, record yourself and tell me a story. And that is because people just put themselves on. Why did Be Real do so well? If you haven't heard of the Be Real app, Be Real was when you would get a notification, take a picture of what you were doing right now. And as a social media platform, it hasn't sustained because people want to post what they want to post about. There's not enough to get people sticking on the platform. But the concept itself, it had its super peak and it was doing really well for, I would say, during 2022, really. I'd need to check the stats to be certain. But it was about revealing your authentic self. And we're seeing this pattern. So when you're deciding what to do, I would like you, and this is going to go against so many people's advice, I would like you to do it in a way that feels best for you. I would like you to write your own little script if that's what you want to do. If you would like to just talk to the camera and practice, please go for it. If you would like to do a podcast, if you'd like to do a blog, do it. Go online and say things that are not the same as everybody else. You need to think, if I'm out there copying the style, copying the content, what's going to make you stand out online? Because there is plenty of people out there. The barrier of entry is low. And that also means that there's plenty of people deciding to jump on the bandwagon, as they should. It's a free-for-all. But the people regurgitating the same stuff, like how to do this, how to do that. You've got competitors. They're going to post the same stuff. So then you've got to have different opinion, different thought, different technique, different points, and make that obvious. Well, they're louder than me. Maybe I should be louder. Well, they're a little more softly spoken, and they seem to get attention. Maybe I should talk softly. None of that is authentic. None of that is bringing your unique personal self to it. And we end up with copycat syndrome, where you just repeat what other people are doing, hearing what other people are doing. Like, on my account, I used to do trends. On TikTok, trends used to really work. They don't anymore. I used to get really good at messaging. There's still some place for it on Instagram. But I don't know about you. Every time, after about a week of hearing the same song, if I hear the song, I just skip the video. Because I know what it's going to be about. I'm done. So when you think of that psychology, that's what I'm doing as a user. I have different accounts. I've got the business account, I've got my personal account, I've got many other business accounts. But like that's on my personal page, or any of them. If I see the same thing, like I just scroll. So number one is to be authentic with what you do and choose content that is going to reflect you. I am not going to tell everybody to have a podcast. I'm not going to tell everybody to have a podcast. I work with purpose-driven entrepreneurs, people that want to change the world. To do that, you need to change the way people think. And to change the way people think, you need to have enough exposure and time with them for them to trust you, to be able to share your ideas, for them to think differently to what they did before. That's a long game. That's what podcasting's for. It is not a case of, follow this one video, listen to this one episode of mine, and then you are perfect at X, Y, Z. It doesn't work like that. I'm not entertaining in the general terms. I don't have dogs. I'm not funny. And I talk intellectually. So it's going to appeal to a certain person. Perfect. So coming to the next point then, you do need to know your audience very, very well. Your actual ideal client in specific detail. A lot of people post content and they kind of guess what they think their audience want. And they're like, well, people want to know that. Do they actually want to know that? What market research did you do? Now, if you've ever watched an episode of The Apprentice, does it still run? I don't have a TV license, so I don't know, but I think it does. They always used to do things, market research, where they got some kids to come in and play with the toy that they'd just created. And don't get me wrong, it's a very small sample. They got some people to come in and taste the weird chocolate that they'd just made and realise that they put something in that cost a fortune. All of those things are market research. They get instant feedback from people. When you first start out, you've got 0 followers, you actually don't have anyone to think about. You go, well, I think they're like this and I think they're like that. And really, you need an example. You need just one person that's gone through that transformation or is going through it right there and then. And you need to start really understanding them. Now, in life coaching terms, therapy, we often try to help the people that we were once before. So that makes it very easy because you need to just take yourself back to when you were trying to work out what you're trying to help other people work out and go, what was it that I wanted to hear? What was it that I needed to be able to motivate me? Because nobody cares about your life coaching, your therapy, my podcast, no one cares. They care about what that thing can do for them. Was it that you needed a new way to date online? Was it that you needed to break the cycles of family trauma, of generational trauma? Was it that you needed to get seen online? And whatever it is, It's not intellectually what you know they need. It's what words they are using to describe what they need. And you've got to think about that psychology. People do not want my podcast course. They don't always know that they want a podcast to begin with. What they're struggling with is getting seen online, or being able to get seen online to make change in the world, if I'm going very specific on my audience. So therefore, I have to think differently when you look at the topic titles of these podcast episodes. They are not how to start a podcast. If I wanted to do that's slightly different. That's a lead magnet for a podcasting course. That makes sense. My podcast is not a lead magnet for podcasting. My podcast is a long-term get to know me, decide that I'm the right kind of person you want to work with, and here are my offers, which right now happen to be podcasting and a bit of content creation. My business is going to evolve. That's going to change. It could still be there. It could be the core offer, and there's more to go with it. But it's still bringing a range of people in. But I know specifically what the people want that are in my audience and who I'm trying to get in front of. So you need to really get in that mindset of that person. If it isn't a past you need to find someone that is the perfect client for you right now. And you don't sit there and interview them and say, what do you want? Because sometimes they say things that are not what they really want. You do need to hear what they're saying first. Now, how do you get seen online when you've got 0 followers? Number 3 is a bit backwards, is that you need to go offline. It is the biggest thing that I didn't do right in my first business, which is not establish myself with people in real life. And that is because you are trying to build trust. And the way the algorithms work is by having a measurement of your interaction. Now, when you've got no followers and then you do get one, you've got to try and get that one follower to keep engaging with stuff. Otherwise, as a percentage, it's going to look like 0. This is why friends and family can be helpful to you, but many of us have always had the family member, the friends saying they'll triumph our business ideas, yet never interact with anything. And it's not their duty to, but then please don't follow the content. Like, if you find the content annoying, if it's not for you, if you're like, I don't care about business, like, I'm just not going to like anything you ever do, cool, that's okay, please unfollow me. We want a higher percentage of people engaging with our content. And if our friends and family aren't going to do that just out of pure support, then please leave the building. Please go away. What we need to do, therefore, is go offline to a couple of events which are going to be in amongst your ideal clients. Whether you do pay to speak at an event, that's quite brave, but some of you might be naturally inclined to do that. Maybe your past job, you were used to giving presentations, talking at events, so this is a no-brainer. But you need to get in front of an audience in person so that people know that you are real, they can trust you, you can have real conversations with people, and then that's when you get a few followers that genuinely know who you are, have a bit of an interest in what you do. Maybe you've shared your mission and they feel inclined to then like your posts and to engage with them. And what's that going to do for the algorithm? Actually feed it a bit. And once the algorithm trusts you a little bit, that's when it will start pushing you out. That's when it starts putting you in front of people. That's how to move off of 0 followers and get seen online, is by doing a little bit of work offline. And I stick to that myself. I will be going to a networking event or something that fills that gap every single week in 2024. There's no way I'm missing it. And if I miss it one week, I'll be doing 2 another, except for the week I go on holiday. I'll try and skew it though. I'll keep an eye. But I'm already starting with 3 days of networking this week. So does that count as 3 weeks covered? Maybe. Now, the other last thing is that whatever strategy you commit to, if you do want to try trending, there's nothing wrong with the things that people say online. If you want to try trending reels, if you want to try B-roll footage, if you want to try just carousels, all of those things can work. Whatever you are trying to work out if it works for you, you need to try it for 90 days. There is no point doing it any less, because you have to commit, continue and keep going so that you've got good enough at it. Unless you already have a skill in marketing and content creation, then you can slightly shorten that. So if I'm going to try something out, like, I generally don't have to do it for 90 days now because I've tried many of them. So it's sort of like, oh, can I do this again but do it better? So I'm not having to learn the basics. But when you're first creating montage videos, like behind the scenes or come with me on my day doing X, Y, Z, that takes time to like, how do I edit this? How do I add the music? What text do I need to add? And they're kind of things that iterate as you do the process. So you can spend 3 to 4 weeks learning how to do it, and then you see videos because the algorithm gives it to you naturally that are like, oh, add this, add captions, make sure you've got a call to action, etc. Whatever technique you need to learn how to do. After you've mastered the art of actually creating that content practically, you need to master the art of then repetition, getting results, etc. And depending on your posting frequency, which for most people is 3 times a week, you got to give it 90 days. You can skew it if you do the experimentation exception, where you post excessively in a short period of time, say 3 weeks, and then you're getting your results quicker, absolutely fine as well. But for most people, what is manageable, what is appropriate, and what doesn't feel like it's pushing loads of people away by pushing loads of content out, is to consistently try that method for 3 months, for a quarter, so that you can see the result. Otherwise, you don't know if it's just a good day, a bad day, etc. You haven't given it enough time to establish that. So getting seen online when you have 0 followers takes this solid mindset to realise that we all started at 0. We were all babies once. We couldn't walk. When I was learning to drive, I didn't learn to drive, and then I passed a test, and then I learnt to drive the second time, as it were, because you were suddenly on your own. It was an entirely different condition. And teaching, I was exactly this. I had 0 teaching experience, and then I got good at it, and I built up a reputation. And the same is going to happen with you and your online business, because you're going to always start at 0. And it is scary to start again. In my case, I'm like, I've got to start again. It was so much easier to get views, but views didn't mean anything. We've got this misplaced values that the number matters. And to end and to make you realise that the numbers don't matter. I had 2.3k followers on Instagram, and selling was hard work. So when it comes to thinking about getting seen online, yes, you want to increase getting seen online. When you've got 0 followers, it is a case of sticking with your authentic self and being genuine, coming up with some great content that not necessarily people have done. And if you just need to practice content, then by all means copy some people for a little bit of time, but find your own way of doing things. Find your own message. Your own voice is key. You want to know who you're trying to speak to specifically, so what you are saying to them resonates and that they can feel movement towards you quite naturally, like you get them. So why would they not come towards you? Offline is more important at this stage than online. The offline is actually going to drive the online. It's strange to say. And you can try all the different strategies you want. I don't care where you got the idea from, copied me, heard it from someone else. Whatever you're going to commit to, you're going to commit to for 90 days. And those things are actually going to lead to you getting seen online. They are specific to you. They're for you to work out, but they are the ways to get seen. Because I can't tell you one strategy that isn't going to be outdated in 6 months' time. These are the strategies that will stand the test of time, and you'll be able to listen to this podcast episode whenever you need and know that that's going to work in the approach that you're going to take. 0 is not a bad thing. 0 is a great place to start when you're making crappy content, like you will be at this point in time if you're early to the content creation game. If you want to keep up with the different ways of getting seen online, of raising your profile, to bring in more sales and to change the way the world thinks, then make sure that you head over to the Clever Content Creator Instagram pages, The Clever Content Creator, with full stops in between all of those. I wish I'd chosen something different, but we'll talk about that another time. And stay up to date with everything that's on there, on my posts and on stories. Until next time, keep changing the way the world thinks, one podcast at a time.